this PRC meeting to order at 3:35. I apologize for being late. My school ends at 3 o'clock, and closing Elbow Road makes my commute rather challenging. In attendance, we have Ms. Felton and Mr. Bowensteel and numerous staff folks. Thank you for being here today. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda is adopted. Do I have a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from November 25th?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the meeting minutes from November 25th are adopted. All right, old business, we will look at policy 529 first, and that is our awards for achievement, class rank, and honor designation. I've got some comments. Ms. Linetti, do you want to go first, or shall I just bring my comments
Let me see if I can frame it for those who are not familiar with it. When we looked at this, and this has been up back and forth a few times, Mr. Jameson and I noticed that there was a state regulation about what is required to be on a transcript. And one of them had a somewhat ambiguous phrase that said you have to notify the public if you do class rank, and if you do class rank honor, you have to list the class rank and the semesters that apply. And above that, it falls under a list of things that are required to be under the transcript. We had not looked at that, I think, in 2018 when we initially made this change to there, and we weren't quite sure how to interpret. Our interpretation was, since it was under the list of required documents that required elements of a transcript, that we were going to have to change this policy because it wasn't clear exactly what they meant on class ranks. And it does turn out that we do, when requested, provide class ranks to those folks that need it. So we do have that practice, not common, but we do that when requested. I believe you have since spoken, and I've been informed that you've since spoken to the Virginia Department of Education, because we did have that discussion. Wasn't clear to me that the Virginia Department of Education was going to enforce that regulation. I've never seen them put out any guidance. I've never seen them actually enforce regulations having to do with transcripts, so we weren't quite sure where to go with that. But I think you have, in the meantime, had a conversation.
Yes, so that's what I would like to share, and I just, I've talked with some people a couple of times today, and just was talking on the travel here, so I didn't get a chance to call my colleagues, but I did talk with someone, and I read it, and there's different interpretations that, the code, which is an administrative code that our lawyer is referencing, does say that if we provide class rank, we have to notify. It does not mean that you have to print the class rank. It does not mean you have to publish them. It does not mean you have to make them public, i.e. on someone's transcript. So the person I talked with was not a lawyer. He said he could get me from the Attorney General's office, a complete, what do you call them, Cammy?
It would be an opinion.
An opinion, but he couldn't get it by 3:30. But his interpretation was also how I kind of read it, was we have to notify them and follow the things in the code about how we come up with class rank, what classes and all that stuff, and that class rank will be available if you request it, and that we would not put it on transcript unless you requested it, or a college, university scholarship, or military application required it. So, and that's what we had in the 2023 when we voted on
That's
this.
how it currently reads.
Yes, and so what I propose is that we stay as is, like we currently have it.
And that might be a good thing to do at the moment if we're going to get a formal opinion, because what threw Mr. Jamison and I off is you were quoting the section under there, but it falls under, there's a list of like 25 elements, and I can read this off if anybody wants to look at this. It's 8 VAC 216030 format options, and it talks about what you have the option to put on a secondary transcript, and it said the required information as followed. What you were citing was 23 under the required information, which reads notification of whether school/program ranks students, semicolon, if so, the rank in class with given number of semesters used for computation. The way it's written, as you noted, that is confusing. Why would you notify somebody if they're listed to tell you what is on the transcript? Then you wouldn't talk about where you notify the public, whether you put class rank or not. So the whole paragraph is confusing to us.
It is written very, yeah, it's not written very well.
Because we had the same thing, but because Mr. Jameson, when we looked at it, because it was listed on the elements of things required, which doesn't make sense to talk about notification, we thought, well, maybe we need to be in compliance with the regulation since it's required. But again, written as it is, it doesn't read as an element of required transcript to talk about notifying the public, because that's something you would do outside of a transcript. So clarification would probably be helpful for us. As I mentioned, I was speaking to the administration yesterday. I'm not aware where VDOE's ever come after anyone for what's on the elements on the transcript, so I don't know that we're in significant risk of VDOE finding a violation under this regulation for the way we're doing it. But if we leave it the way it is, currently written, we can wait for that interpretation. If VDOE does change and come back to us, then obviously we can correct to whatever VDOE is requiring us to have in the transcripts.
Yes, I mean, personally, that's what I would like to do, leave it as is, so that D, honor designations would be each high school will provide grade point averages for class rank for individual colleges, university scholarships, or military applications that require this information or that is requested by a parent or legal guardian of student. That's how it is written right now.
Correct. It would read, each high school will provide grade point averages for class rank for individual college that require that information. So that's where it's a little confusing. Otherwise, you're not putting it on there.
Correct.
So make it clear, because it does read almost in the opposite. People understand you're not going to be doing class ranks unless somebody asks for it, then you will provide it to them.
Well, if we want to change that first sentence to, we will not be putting class rank on transcripts unless, I mean, however you think it would be more clear. But yeah, we're only going to do it if there's a request or if it's needed from a military application or. Well, she's working on that. Do I have any comments from my colleagues?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Ms. Felton.
Just to make it clear for our audience that are listening in, or parents or students that are listening in, I'd like to reference the letter that came from Superintendent Robertson on December the 8th, 2025. And at the bottom, in the last paragraph, he said, well, in the second paragraph, at the bottom, he says, moving forward and until the school board wishes to revisit this issue, we will be implementing 5-29 as written. This means that class rank will be removed from all transcripts, and class rank can be calculated upon request and provided to the requestor. But it cannot then be added to the transcript if this presents a concern. Then I encourage the PRC to discuss, which we are doing now, this dilemma. And he's saying we will continue as is. And I just want to make the public aware of what we are doing and how we're moving forward with this as well. Is that my understanding?
Yes, ma'am. And understand there's two different concepts. One concept is what does the Virginia Department of Education require us to have on the transcripts? We need to clarify that piece. Two would be your general philosophy as a school board regarding class rank. So that's something you would decide. If VDOE tells us we have to have it on there, I think what they would end up telling us is if you do class rank, then you have to or do not have to do that. I don't think they would tell you you have to do class rank, but that interpreting rate. But if you want an overall decision, that remains your decision as to whether you do class rank. And so that'll remain your decision. We do need to make sure we're in compliance with the Virginia Department of Education, whatever the Virginia Department of Education requires us to have on a transcript.
Understand.
Yeah, Mr. Bowensiel? Okay, the only other thing.
We do need to, there's a section 3 we need to
Right,
go
yeah,
talk about.
section 3, if you would turn on the back or the second page. Section 3, Mr. Robertson last time suggested, and I think it was his suggestion, that we have A, B, C, as we separate the valedictorian and salutatorian, for the Princess Anne School, the IB program and the Ocean Lakes, he suggested that we also do that in class rank. So B, is stated for the Princess Anne School profile, the school division will include separate class ranks for the international baccalaureate programs students and the students, and the same with C for Ocean Lakes. But again, that would be only when requested.
Ms. Weems, we did meet yesterday, and we're going to leave. Okay, this is where we've had further discussion about this, so.
Mr. Jameson, I didn't even see you over there, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, I would have called on you. Okay, so what is it? What was your discussion?
I want to let the school administration speak to this, but we did, after talking through this, and in light of the fact that they're in class ranks, whether we needed to have this, so maybe Mr. Jameson can explain.
Right, so good afternoon, and with the decision to keep the policy as written and with class rank not appearing on transcripts moving forward, there is no need to include B and C. Simply put.
Okay, so even if someone requested their class
Class rank.
rank because maybe their military or their college requested that, you don't think that would be helpful to separate that out for that student?
And it's not going to be needed at that point in time. If we wanted to separate it out, it would not be on the profile, which this is alluding to.
Okay,
And we would need to work through what that language would be. So for right now,
since we're not in.
correct, the
Okay.
cleaner approach would be
Okay,
And Ms. Williams, just a clarification, I spoke with the head blue and gold recruiting officer for the Navy in this area about how a military academy might look at like this. And he gave an example of Norfolk Academy does not use class ranks. So in that situation, when they've had candidates from Norfolk Academy apply to the Naval Academy, they then look at the quartiles, they can ask for that information, the top 25, the top 50%. They can also, there's some national lists, but they can look at equivalent GPAs. So a student that didn't have class rank, if that was an issue, there are other ways that those programs that require class rank can get that information. So we're not necessarily disadvantaging a student by doing that, just clarification.
okay. Just want to make sure we want our students to get all the options they can. All right, so let's strike that B and C in the red. And then, Ms. Lenetti, would you just read what you have for D? Exactly what that
actually-
first sentence would say.
The question is, do you want to change or do you just want it to leave the language as it is and wait to see what VDOE tells us before we change it? Because when I look at our VDOE comes back and says we have to change everything, are we going to be changing this policy twice? Or do we just want to, do you
Well,
want to
what does
clarify?
it say? Okay, so what does it say as is? Because
It
I've got
would
so many
read,
red marks on here.
Beginning in the 2023-24 school year, each high school will provide grade point averages for class rank for individual colleges, universities, scholarships, or military applications that require this information and that is requested by a parent, legal guardian, or student.
The only thing that seems weird to me is it's not 23-24. I mean, that just seems kind of weird to be having a policy.
And that's kind of where we were taking it out, because what that indicated was those students who would then be seniors in because this was, when this was
Okay.
added, it was
Okay.
2018, and you had made the determination that, fair notice, the incoming ninth graders would now be subject to this rule. So that,
Okay.
again, 2023, that was sort of why we were taking that out originally, was because it doesn't start, that is now applicable. All those students who would have been before that time period should have graduated by now.
Okay.
So you could just bring it to start with each high school will provide grade point averages. Either way, you can leave it in there, we can bring it back, or we can just leave this a little bit longer, wait to see if BDOE gives us any different interpretation, and then bring it back. Again, my guess is, the Attorney General's office will probably not be getting back to us in the next week or two, so we may have till the next meeting to correct this.
Yeah, I mean, I think as is, we're still fine from the conversations that I've had and reaching out to other school districts as well. But do you want to leave it as is or?
I would reference again back to what Dr. Robinson said, if we go back to the original, because now if we leave it as is, it's still it will, to me, cause more confusion to the parents and the student. Well, what are you doing? What's really happening? and we don't know the mind or the decision of VDOE that's coming in. It's gonna take a minute. So I would like to clear it up so that when they're looking at it, they know exactly how to move forward. Because a lot of this information and what we're putting forth, that's how some of the students are choosing their classes in schools that they're attending and academies. So going back again to what Dr. Robinson said, to go back to the original
Yeah, that's what, yeah, that's
Yeah,
as is.
and leave
yeah.
it as is.
Okay, so you are in favor of leaving it
Leave it
as
as is.
Okay,
all, Yes.
okay. Mr. Bonesteel? Okay, all right, so, we're gonna leave policy 529 as is, which
And
was,
on the board is how it would, I've taken out the deletion, so that's how that's going to read. Minus this extra E here.
okay,
And that's, and we will take out this, well, actually, we don't need to do anything. You can, what you would do is I think you just vote to retract your prior decision on amending this policy, and just, leave it as is. So you could just simply say that the previous vote to amend policy 529 is revoked, and you're not going to go forward with the change.
okay, do I have a motion to revoke any amendments and to keep policy 529 as is?
So move.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Policy 539, student-led demonstrations. Yes, a clarification, since we're not doing anything, do we need to even bring it back to the school board?
No, you
Yeah,
wouldn't,
that's right,
because you're
because we
not,
haven't
it won't,
made any
doesn't go up,
changes.
Bill, we do.
Yeah, that's why we didn't vote for that. yeah.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming that Dr. Robinson's already told you he will implement the policy, but we can certainly send a clarification after this meeting that the decision was not to retract the prior vote and not amend it, so they'll understand.
Thank you.
All right, policy 539, student-led demonstrations.
So I updated the L portion from the last meeting where you all wanted the change of the digital expression to media digital expression and online conduct. What I did was took our student directory information policy and regulation 5-66 and 5-66.1, as well as FERPA information to update that to make it more about how to represent themselves with the media, the pictures that may be taken during these things or whatever. So it is a little bit longer, but updated it in that form instead of it just being about online stuff.
All right, and Cammie, and colleagues, I had asked Cammie to look over the definitions, and on the first page, policy 539, the first page under C is definitions.
I started typing it on the screen. I didn't put it in your package because we haven't worked out the language.
Okay,
So
I
on
was
the
just asking her
screen-
about third party, because it seems like the definition that she had here pretty much says anyone can go, pretty much anyone that has any affiliation with Virginia Beach City Public Schools, meaning if I have children in the schools, if, I can go to any of this, and so I don't think that was our intent, so I asked her kind of to look at third party and maybe define it more clearly, and that's what she's putting up there.
Now that I didn't capture the parent part because I just started typing this in, and the part that I put in, it's hard to see on here. Let me see if I can put it in yellow. What was not in yellow was what was defined in there, and what Mrs. Weems had pointed out was when we talk about not affiliated, a parent affiliated, a teacher at another school might come over, not affiliated the school, to participate in this, that there probably wasn't a clear enough definition. And I did mention employee, like his parents. on there. So what I started to add was, it would read, any individual, organization not affiliated with Virginia Beach City Public Schools, employees, officers, including school board members who are not assigned to the school or have not been assigned to assist with events at the school or site demonstration. We might have to do parents or family members. One of the things we're trying to get clear is they should be student-led, there shouldn't be adults walking in and setting this up to do that. So we don't want to see some outside group using our students to create a demonstration. The intent was this would be student-led. But when Mrs. Weems and I talked, when you talk about affiliated, it's not very well defined what affiliated means. So yes, my children go to the school, so therefore it's okay for me to come here and be in the event. We also want to clear, we might be aware that there's going to be a large demonstration. We're worried about security because we've heard potential threats. So we want to bring our safe school people over to be there in case there's a problem. So they would be okay to come for that, but we wouldn't necessarily want somebody to automatically assume that they could come just because they had some attachment to Virginia Beach City Public Schools. So I'm not sure this fully captures it, but that might be some clarification.
If you could clarify for us, because you have any individual organization not affiliated with Virginia Beach City Public Schools, but employees are affiliated with Virginia Beach City Public Schools, what do you?
Well, if you come down to employees, I say it really should be employees, officers, school board members who are not assigned to the school, who have not been assigned to assist. So you have to follow the whole paragraph out.
Okay.
Now, we might be able to clear that up. So let's say the event's happening at a high school and you're an elementary school teacher. We wouldn't want you to leave whatever you're doing just because you're associated with the elementary school and come over to there. Or, you're a football coach and all of a sudden you're showing up over here because you're a football coach but running an event at an elementary school that you're not assigned to tend to. And we may be able to clear this up. But as I mentioned, we would want, if for some reason our media need to be out there to deal with media who are on the site, if we are worried about safe schools, we need to have extra safe school folks out there to ensure safety at the event, we would want them to be able to go.
Mr. Bowensteel, you had, it's still very kind of confusing, but what was your question?
No, I would just, I don't know,
Yeah, because, the same thing, like when Cammie and I talked, the way that it was, you could have a kindergartner at Creed's Elementary, and they could be doing something at Bayside, but then you could drive to Bayside and participate because you happen to have a kindergartner that attended Creed's Elementary. So that's why I wanted it a little bit more defined. How about, to me, if there's a demonstration at Bayside High School, the student should be involved, and whomever that principal deems necessary to make sure that there's safety measures in place. And Cheryl and Dr. Colucci and Mr. Delaney, maybe y'all could speak. I just want to make sure that if there's demonstrations that they're not terribly disruptive, that they're safe, and that the people are there that are supposed to be there, and these are student-led, so it's supposed to be students. So, help us out here.
Would you like me to provide you like an example of where this has occurred and how we would operate it in high school? So, when I was the principal at Salem High School, that was at the time of the Parkland incident down at the shooting in Florida. So obviously, students were upset with what occurred there. And so what we did across all of our high schools was, and I think this is where the impetus of the policy came out initially, that adjustment, was we typically would have a student group that would come meet with me as the principal. This is what we want to do. I would talk to them about kind of some parameters that needed to be put in place in terms of, hey, if you walk out of class and miss X amount of time, it could be seen as an absence. So many times they would schedule it at the last 12 minutes of the class period because they knew at 15 you were absent. So there were things such as that. We then were to ensure that there was a safe place for them to go. Whether that was, typically, we preferred indoors, like in the commons, but many times the students wanted to go outside. So we would talk through that. And so in our instance, for example, we were able to get them through the collaboration, the discussion, out into the football stadium where it's fenced in. It restricted people from outside coming in. But then we would have to station staff across the building to ensure as kids were walking out, we were shepherding them to that area. And we didn't have individuals, staying in the hallway or disrupting instruction. So we would have to post sometimes teachers, teachers and definitely security. Administrator would typically be outside with them, and in my experience, we would say, okay, it's time to disperse, and they would go back to class. That was the kind of traditional way it was done across all of our high schools. Some might say that's not necessarily spontaneous, that is kind of
Right.
how to go through that process. We always appreciated the respectful nature of the students to understand that we had to operate a school, and they also knew that we had to contact their parents if they walked out of the classroom, because they needed to know that there could be potential discipline for that. We were pretty, used common sense in that end, but there was conversation with students like, yes, you can be disciplined if you do certain things that is at a disruptive level. So it required a lot of coordination on that end, and to make sure it went off very smoothly. And you may remember in those days, I think every high school had, and some middle schools, and we did not have any major incidents that occurred as a result of that. But that
So
comes through
yeah,
that coordination.
Well,
I
thank
hope
you.
that gives you a good
Yes, thank
picture.
you, because I think a lot of people don't realize how much coordination it does take just to get, like you said, personnel out there, an administrator, security. So there's no need, though, for people from other buildings or other parents and adults to be there unless you needed, like if it was so big, I guess there would be a case where the principal might have to get an extra security person maybe.
Yeah, we
or-
would work with Office of Security Emergency Management if we felt like there was a need for that. So we were able to contain it within a fenced-in area. If a spontaneous demonstration started out in front of the school building where there's a lot of access from outsiders to come in, you may remember that during COVID where some were saying they're going to come to the schoolhouse doors and protest. That created a lot of anxiety for our principals to say, how do I manage getting students into the building while also navigating parents?
Right. Yeah.
That's extremely concerning when there's others that are involved outside of the school, because we also have good relationships predominantly with our students. So that engagement with the educators typically is very respectful. You lose some of that once you get out of that confined
Right.
area, and you have individuals in there that may have a different reason for being present than just to protest.
So this says, people who are not affiliated with our school system should not be there. Parents and family members should not be there. Employees or officers who are not assigned to the school where it's hosted should not be there. Okay. That makes it much more clear. Any other comments on that from my colleagues?
So, with the school board, to me, I'm reading that school board members can show up.
No.
I'm just,
The difficulty is, this is a definition of third party, and you're gonna see third party appear down later in the policy limiting school boards. So anybody who meets this definition will fall under the restriction further down.
Yeah, this is just the definition of what a third party is.
Okay.
Do we agree with that definition? Yeah, okay, you added host. Okay, good.
main thing is safety, right?
Yeah. Who are not assigned to the school or who have not been assigned to assist with events. Okay, I'm fine with that definition.
That's good.
To me, that clarifies it. Miss, are you okay with that, Miss Felton? Or do
Yeah,
you
but
think-
I reserve the right to come back. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, oh
that
yes, of course.
I just reserve it to come back to address it maybe again.
Oh, of course.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Williams, do you just want to go section by section from here out? How did you want to get them?
If my colleagues need that, because,
What's that?
yeah, do y'all want to just go section by section? We are
I
already.
will tell you
been
one,
over this.
I did have one school board member say to me, this does not address how you would do a national or a statewide event where they said everybody's agreed to walk out at 1 o'clock across the nation. And our policy, you'll see, says we can't use instructional time to do that. And if it happens at 1 o'clock is the start of a class, and then we would say, no, I'm sorry, because on our schedule, that's its class time. Maybe in, California, it's the beginning of school, they don't worry about that, but at our time, that's a constructional time. They wanted to know if the PRC could have a discussion about some exception when there is an effort to coordinate a time and event to have whatever effect it is they're trying to protest about. We've not had a discuss. I told them that was not something we had discussed with the committee last time we looked at it. So I'm just going to put that out there. That was a request that somebody had brought to me.
I agree. You ready, Ms. Green?
Yeah, Ms. Felton, did you have a comment on that part, what Ms. Lynn?
I agree with you. I want to get into that, but if we do it section by section,
Okay.
I think would be better
Okay,
instead of moving around
okay.
all over the place.
All right, Cammie, let's
Okay,
start.
so let me go quick. So just frame it again. Remember, you also have one on assemblies, which I believe we brought that one back to, if I'm correct. So the definition that we were trying to get to, and I will tell you, I've had some people suggest we combine them back together again. So we might want to think about that, but that would require a little bit more work. I think what we were trying to do was segregate out those things that the school has decided to sponsor. Let's say we were going to do every 15 minutes an assembly on drunk driving. That's school sponsored, as opposed to this, which was the students have decided to demonstrate on their own. It's not necessarily part of a set curriculum. I think we were trying to distinguish between those two. I have had some suggestions, maybe put it back together, so we'd have to rethink that. So this one, 539, is just student-led demonstration. So the first part is policy statement. The school board is committed to constructive exercise of rights related to speech and assembly permitted by the Constitution and applicable law. This policy establishes consistent expectations and procedures for student demonstrations in a manner that is fair, equitable, and supportive of civil discourse while maintaining safe and orderly school operations. So that's your overall belief. And then purpose is obviously just that, the rights,
If you could
responsibilities.
stop there, and go back, I would just like to just reiterate in one of our meetings that Chair Weems said that, this policy that we're working on, it is very important. And it's going to take time for us to get it to that point where it speaks to all of our students. It's a couple of things that in that first part, policy statement. And after getting a lot of conversation from the community, and the biggest community that I got it from was our students. Got a lot of calls from students, and they feel that they are impressed that we are taking the time to consider them and keeping them as a focus as how we move out with this. One of my concerns is that I would like to change where you have the student. I would like to show that it's student-led throughout this particular document, just to make sure that it stay consistent with what we are doing, and make sure that it shows there's like student-led where we go through, because it makes it more indicative of what we're doing and where we're going. I know somebody said that's redundant, but I think it's important that it shows up where students are, where student-led concerning this procedure. Also, in the policy statement, attorney and my colleagues, you read that the school board is committed to constructive exercise of rights related to speech, assembly permitted by they would like to see us place back the First Amendment of the Constitution. The First Amendment of the Constitution. It bears more essence of where we're going and what it is and what it speaks to. Wording to the students and the community is very important. So we are speaking to the First Amendment. I would like to have the change placed there. Also, I have some concerns about the wording, the Constitution and applicable law. Does that leave us open to, is that a gray area? And I'm thinking about the two policies, Tinker versus Des Moines, and Tinker and Haley versus James. does that leave a gray area there when we said inapplicable to law? So taking that out or changing to some other verbiage?
I'm not sure if it's a gray area. It leaves it open to case law, which is a form of law. You've got statutory law, you've got the Constitution, and case law is court interpretation. And sometimes those court interpretations do get incorporated into laws and statutes. It does allow us to look at those circumstances. I think saying applicable law would allow us to look at Tinker. It would allow us to look at some of the other cases that we have on these topics. It also, there are laws that have to do with disorderly conduct, with noise around schools. There's what are demonstrations. So there are some criminal laws on it. So those things might also apply. While you might want to be out there doing something, you can't set the school on fire. You can't, break materials and things like that. So those kind of laws might also apply on a area like that. So those are criminal laws that apply. So we could get into further detail on it, but I think when I left applicable law was for us to realize, well, you have First Amendment rights out there. You don't get to set a bonfire and set, the stadium on fire because you're mad about that kind of thing, because that's going to apply to it.
Instead of case law, so you said applicable law because it could reach beyond.
Yeah, and I will say what you're talking, the Tinker line, those are court interpretations, which many of us almost cite like law. They're well known. That is a form of law.
But with my, I would like to have those changes made, if my colleagues agree as well. I think that would be more appropriate, more feasible, and make the impact different to place by the First Amendment of the Constitution.
So I've highlighted in yellow where I've added that. How it would look if you add that.
Yeah, I think we should leave applicable law in there. If it's permitted by the Constitution, the First Amendment is part of the Constitution, so, does that even make a difference?
It doesn't harm anything by writing that.
Yeah, that's fine. So I'm fine with adding by the First Amendment. Mr. Morensill, how about you? Okay. And you added student rights up there, Cammie. I see you added the word student. That's not on my copy.
Correct. That, my proposal is, I think that might reach what Ms. Felton was asking, and that's in the yellow in the first sentence under section A.
Okay. She added students there. Okay. And then the top, of course, says student-led demonstrations. All right. Is that good for that part? Policy statement? All right. The purpose. We'll move on to the next section, purpose.
Again, this reads, the purpose of this policy is to outline the rights, responsibilities, and procedures for students engaging in peaceful demonstration on school property and during school-sponsored events, or activities, sorry.
That's fine. That looks fine with me. Fine. Okay.
I'm not going to read the definitions unless you want me to, but they're set forth, and there's 6 of them.
Okay, so next we come to see the definitions, and we've got, is it 6 definitions there? Yeah, 6 definitions. If y'all want to just read over those, and of course we've tweaked third party, but we can always come back to that as well. Any discussion on any of the definitions?
I would like to look at definition number 2, demonstration, and how it is read now. An organized assembly of students peacefully expressing a viewpoint or raising awareness of an issue such as observance or semi-collective action. Students are very sensitive about this particular number 2 because they feel that observance does not give them explicit of what they're trying to do or what they're trying to convey. So I would like to change it to read number 2, demonstration, an organized assembly of students peacefully expressing a viewpoint or raising awareness of an issue such as vigils or rallies, marches, sit-ins, and walk-ins. I went into a lot of discussion with the students the verbiage trying to get it appropriate and right. And this is what we came away with. I had the opportunity to sit with Dr. Robertson's advisory, students advisory, and a lot of discussion went on with that as well. But if you ever get in a conversation with these students, they have a little bit more to say than we are subjected to until you really sit down and have a one-on-one. So even from the middle school, I had a couple of middle school students and high school students to weigh in on this particular definition. And this is what we all came away with, because they felt that the word observant did not speak to their impression of what they wanted or they felt that they had a right to do. So those are the words that they used. And I can read it again.
Let me see what I put in yellow into two, see if I got it right. Such as vigils, rallies, marches, sit-ins, walk-ins, observances, or similar collective action.
They use march in example as the Marjorie Stone, when they had permission to walk out at a certain time, they consider that as a march.
Okay. Was it the term walk-ins? Did I get that right? Sit-ins and walk-ins?
Sit-ins and walk-ins.
Okay.
No walkouts, but walk-ins.
Cammie, those that you have listed here, I mean, would those fall under what you originally put as observances? I mean, like if somebody, or maybe Mr. Delaney, when you were principal, did anybody come and say, I want to have a sit-in? We want to have a sit-in or a walk-in. And can you kind of explain what that looks like?
In my experience, that was not the request. It's not saying it would not be a request in terms of most of the dialogue you would have is what are you looking to, how are you looking to express this viewpoint? So I go back to the example I gave where we preferred to keep it inside, but they preferred to do it outside. And so that's the example of the conversation. Mm-hmm. And so we would engage in that dialogue of saying, okay, well, if you're going to do it outside, here's where you have to do it outside so we can control that environment. Some of that was they were cognizant, and that the example that you're giving is an example of a national event. That was a national, at this time, Let's All Walk Out. So that's one of those examples of it, where there's a lot of media opportunities potentially with media helicopters and others to capture photos of people outside. So it made sense for our students to say, we want to be outside and be seen by whomever might be trying to publicize this. And you can't do that in the commons. So that was a lot of the dialogue that went on at that time. But that's the long answer to your question of, did they ask for specific, like we want to do a rally or a march or a sit-in specifically to that? It was never asked in that way. And that's why, as I'm reading that, my question would be, do those fall under similar collective action? And if so, that if it's added, it's added, but I'm getting the impression, and now I'm dialoguing a little bit with Ms. Felton, that she's wanting this to show so that kids see that one of the methods they would use is being acknowledged as a potential to do it. That's what I'm hearing from your expression, but I apologize if that's not clear.
Yeah.
I'm trying to paint a picture for
Well,
you.
yeah, because they are types of observances and they are types of collective action. But, so, is that a true statement? Sit-ins, walk-ins, marches, whatever we've listed separately, those are observances and collective actions, right?
I would interpret that if you came to me and said they want to do a vigil and it's not listed here, I would say that's probably a similar collective.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it being there,
Okay.
because obviously those are what we know in the future. I'm not sure what will qualify as an action, so.
Right, okay, so you just want to list them,
I would
yeah.
like to have them listed, and I go back to, this might be in the weeds for us, but for the students, that we are bringing this forward, they want to make sure that the voice is heard in many facets, not just one. They felt that the word observant sort of kind of put them in a box or tight fit, because when we do these policies in order to keep chaos organized, and maybe that literal way of seeing it might not go over with a lot of people, but they want to make sure that their avenue of expressing themselves is placed in this policy, so when they look back, we can say it's there, whether we use it or not, but it's there for my right.
And
that's what
I will tell you, I think the school administration's major concern is safety. That's,
Yeah.
we're not trying to cover everybody's rights. We know in
Right.
this day and age that it can be very, very dangerous. It's not like it used to be when we were growing up, and
Yeah.
our major thing is how do we need to know what you're doing so we can protect you, because there are people out there that are doing things that we don't want you harmed. And I think that's, every time I talk to the school administration, that's their major concern, is how do we safely allow you to do this so that you're not harmed by someone?
And Ms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We don't have, to support that from a school administration where we work with principals, I don't think they would be concerned with that added. I think just the clear discussion is not in the definitions, it's students understanding the disturbance level of any of these
Right.
is where the problem can come in it. So I would agree with Ms. Linetti that a principal would not be overly concerned that you put those there. They just would want to make sure that our students understood the component around disturbance and what that could lead to in terms of moving into a student code of conduct issue. So I just want to, from a definition standpoint, I don't think administration has a concern of that definition.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. I appreciate that. And some of what I'm seeing is it will be proven or shown why I'm going in this manner once we get a little bit deeper into this policy. There's a particular reason, and you're absolutely right. It's all about safety, and it's all about the principals being able to have the right to say yeah or nay. So as we move into this policy, what I'm saying, you see the whole picture. Thank you.
All right, any other comments on any of the definitions? Okay, all right, so that is A, B, C, now we're on D, student rights.
Would you like me to read these, Ms. Weems? The
Well,
Public.
sure.
Okay. D is student rights. Students have the right to: 1, express opinions and beliefs respectfully; 2, organize peaceful demonstrations with prior approval; 3, engage in civil discourse and peaceful activism as permitted under this policy, the Code of Student Conduct, and applicable law without retaliation; and 4, request administrative review of demonstration approval if demonstration approval is denied.
Any comments on section D?
I have a concern with number 4. Request administrative review if demonstration approval is denied. Will we place any area in this policy? I hope that what will be the appeal process if it's a formal request is added and it's denied? What is the formal process, and what will we establish a period of time? And I guess what I'm asking is if a demonstration or a right to do a demonstration, what I would like to see where we would place the appeal process.
Okay, why don't we
really
check,
the appeal
look in
process.
section F, and we can work through this section. Well,
Okay.
again, section E is student responsibilities, we can come back to that. But section F is request and approval process. 1, students must meet with the principal or designee to present a purpose and topic of demonstration, date, time, and location, anticipated number of student participants, school, staff, sponsor if applicable, and E, materials if distributed, if any. Then 2 would be meetings should be scheduled in advance, and demonstrations may not take place until administrative review is completed. This policy does not allow spontaneous demonstrations during instructional time. And I know I've had some people about some concerns. That's the section where individuals were concerned about nationwide events that had a set time. 3, upon approval of a demonstration, the principal designee will work collaboratively with student organizers to support student expression while ensuring A, safety and supervision, B, minimal disruption to instruction, C, appropriate time and location, D, communication with staff and students as needed, and E, the principal designee reserves the right not to approve demonstration if it determines not consistent with school division policies and regulations and/or which may be disruptive. So I don't see that we've set a time period for review.
So with that said, Attorney Linetti, and you reading that, you're absolutely right, went through that as well with the students and the community. So will we have a standard formal application that a student will be able to file or to present to the appropriate administrative? And with that said, all of these things implemented in that application along with the process appeal, if appeal is not taken. I'm requesting, I'm saying that if we are doing this in this manner and we're moving forward, and just to say that our students are more aware of the appropriateness of demonstration laid by a student and with the climate that we're living in now. They're more in tune politically. You want to call it, we'll call something, but I've talked to all span of it. So my question to you, with naming all this under F, absolutely right. Will we, should we, can we form a standard application for students to place forward for student-led demonstration?
I'm absolutely sure we can. I will say I'm not exactly sure if we have anything we currently use for this. I'd have to turn it over to those who approve these issues, but it wouldn't be a problem creating a
Well,
form.
wouldn't that be up to the principal? I mean, I think that we're almost getting too much in the weeds. I mean, it says you have to have a purpose, you have to have a topic, you have to have a date and time. You're gonna go to the principal and you're gonna have this, and I'm assuming, Mr. Delaney, correct me if I'm wrong, if you go and you don't have a staff sponsor, I would assume the principal would say, hey, you guys need to get a staff to sponsor this, go find somebody and come back, or, are you gonna have any materials to be distributed? Yes, well, I need to see them. I mean, it's got it right here. I don't think we can tell the principal or the school that they have to have a form. I mean,
I don't think that is my request, to tell
Yeah.
a principal that he needs to have a form.
okay.
But my thing is, using it in that method, and the student made a good point, it would eliminate a lot of back and forth, waiting around, and especially if we have a time limit, if we want to have a student-led demonstration. I see that it could be appropriate from where they're standing. It would be an appropriate, especially those things that they don't have. Then the principal can say, this is what you need in moving forward. Just a former standard application, and then that's where the appeal, if he's saying, you can't do it because of this, then we have an appeal process. I think from hearing what they're saying, it would make the process a little bit more practical and not pragmatic. Again, it's important that if we're putting this policy together for students, keeping the focus on students and what they want to do, because we are aware now that there are more clubs and there are more activities politically coming into the schools. So we want to make sure that the principal and the students are covered as well in their rights, students' rights. We might not have it now, but I'm just suggesting that it could be a form of making sure that every I and maybe every T is half crossed in this process.
So, Mrs. Felton, one area you're talking about is appeal, which I'm not seeing we've defined out the appeal. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how quick the time period is because it kind of depends on when you want the event to happen. I think it has to be obviously a reasonable time. You can't wait until after the event time period scheduled to do that. You could spell out the appeal a little bit quickly, how quickly they have to do it and who the appeal would go to. I would assume If it is the principal has denied the event, then it probably goes to the Department of School Leadership, to look at. After that, I don't know how, I'm not sure I can pick you the exact time period, that may be school administration, because it might just depend how quickly your event's happening. If you're asking to do it tomorrow morning, and I say they've got 3 days, that may not be reasonable. Or they might have to say you have to put in a certain amount of time ahead of time, so that they have adequate time to get an appeal done, and I may have to turn that over to the administration. I'm not sure that they have had time to develop a process or a form for
Well,
this.
Ms. Linetti, I think we will not be able to cross our Ts and dot our Is on this.
Right.
You're just not going to be able to do it, from a practical standpoint. Because a demonstration could come forward within 24 hours. A certain incident occurs at the school that students want to demonstrate, and that to me is a more organic process that they would want to engage in. A principal would have it would be a challenge to say, you know, here, we would turn this into a 4-page form, I think, and nothing our principals like more than additional forms, but I think, I understand your intent, Ms. Felton, I think to really ensure it's all done in a manner, but there is from a practical, how it operationalizes, in my experience, you're really putting trust in the relationships that adults have with the students in their buildings. And we're very fortunate at Virginia Beach that we do have that with our students that want to be active. We'll come forward and say, this is what I would like to do. And because they want to do that, they are receptive to the organizational structure that the principal can help put in place. Now, I know that can sound naive because it could say some principals can change and others can change, and now you're in that manner. But in my experience, the demonstrations that took place when I was a principal did not occur in a time frame where I felt like I could get a form in place, get things signed, because it was a quick turnaround on many of those things. So in most of my cases was, to your point of crossing Ts and dotting Is, was making sure they understood from a student code of conduct perspective, a student attendance perspective, and a disruption of the instructional process perspective, that they were very clear that I had to monitor all of those things. Now, I can formalize that in a form to just ensure that they understand that those directions have been given. But it's going to be very hard in something like student demonstrations to cover all bases. So I've answered that in a couple of vague ways. Could there be a form? Yes.
Okay.
Is it going to be something that when we put it together, a group of people gets involved and add layers and layers to? And people will then say, well, you need to add this or take that and add this and take that, and it becomes a more tedious process, because I will agree with you as well on this. Principals do want to ensure that everything's covered, and in some instances, we have to work with them on, you're not going to be able to cover it all on a piece of paper. There's going to have to be a response to what's happening right in front of you.
Mr. Delaney, you spoke well to that.
Thank you.
I'm being proactive. I agree with you. We would not be able to create every possible thing that might happen. But you say, can a form be created? Yes. All I'm asking, can a form be created using, under F, students must meet with the principal or designate to present, using those same lines, the same categories, purpose and topic, date and time, anticipation of number of participants, staff-sponsored, materials to be distributed. All I'm asking. I like that, exactly what you said. We are being proactive, making sure that we have something in place, because each generation that come into this public school is going to evolve. So why not we be the first? When I looked online for student-led demonstration, I saw the only one I saw was Virginia Beach City Public School going forward. Nobody else had anything going. So I just want to be proactive with this particular policy. What can we get in here down to just make sure that we are on the right page? And the students actually, under F, they go with all of those things. I just want a form.
Yeah, and I understand, and I think Ms. Linetti knows this. If something's not included on that form, that then happens, that lends itself into somebody running in, whether it's a staff member or others, running into some level of concern or issue, will we then be held to the content of that form in terms of what then went on and somebody goes, well, I was not notified of that on the form that I signed off on. Now, again, I say all of that with, there's probably language that an attorney
Yes.
can then create, but I'm just sharing with you the time it takes to create a form that people then feel comfortable with covering some bases in some language.
Absolutely, but along with Ms. Lynette and her staff, they have created other languages in this policy that speak to exactly what you say. And it's one of them that they chose, it was J. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to use J in a lot more of our student-led assemblies or demonstrations, but I didn't want to get ahead. But what you're speaking of, principals being liable, students being liable, it is in this policy, but I just want to make sure those things that the students are asking, that it's going to cover them as well. Being proactive.
Yes, okay, all right, so we have F, request and approval process, number one, with the A, B, C, D, E. I'm fine with how it's written.
And I could
Bunsen.
add, up and down to section A, appeal or denial. It's hard for me to set a time period because it depends on it, but we could add after notification to conduct a student-led demonstration, appeal can be made to, I'm assuming it's the Department of Student Leadership, but it would have to be a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
I would not want an appeal to go any further than one step up, because I don't want to go into school board because you don't have time for all these meetings. Superintendent doesn't have time for all these meetings, it has to be limited. If there's going to be some appeal, it has to be very limited. Generally, we leave this to the principals to handle because they know best how to manage their school. If you think there should be an appeal, I would limit it to one level at probably school leadership.
Oh, so is the appeal not
Sorry,
listed
it's
anywhere
not,
else?
it actually
It's not-
isn't, it's not, we haven't explained an appeal period. If you wanted it, it would be probably where I've just highlighted it. We'd have to add section 4 on appeal or denial. Again, it gets overly procedural when you do that, because if you want adequate time for appeal for denial, they're gonna have to put it in pretty far ahead of time.
Okay, I thought you had said that, where's the word appeal anywhere else in this policy? I thought it was in another place.
It's in here.
Is it, I don't think we have it. This is a request and approval process.
Number 4, under D, student rights, number 4, request administrative review.
Review,
If
okay.
demonstration
Okay, I'm
approval
sorry.
is
Okay,
denied.
that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
And so, that's why I brought that up. And I'm reading that and I'm seeing that, so well then, will we have, admin time, appropriate time to appeal? How is that done? Didn't want to get into the weeds, but when you're talking to students, they want to make sure you hear every little voice, and I'm bringing it to my colleagues and our attorney to work with me on this as well.
Yeah, definitely. So number 4, when you had request administrative review. So
Sorry, I'm typing on the board as I'm thinking through
Okay.
it.
I'm a student, the principal has denied my request. What's an administrative review? I go back to the principal to see why it was denied, or I would assume the principal tells me why it's denied.
I'm assuming the principal's going to explain to you that, we have SOL testings that day and you really can't
Right.
demonstrate today because we have to finish the test and that's gonna be disruptive. And, I guess you're assuming I really want it today. What I'm typing here saying appeal or denial, and I wouldn't set a time period because I think it's gotta be reasonable in the circumstances. After appeal of denial to conduct a student-led demonstration, appeal may be made. I'm gonna put the Department of School Leadership decision, the Department of School Leadership will be final. That's the most appeal I would have it go.
I mean,
If-
I just don't know why we need an appeal. The principal has said, no, pick another day, or no, we're having testing. I don't know why we then have to go to another level to appeal it.
Only because we have, this, excuse me, we might have to take it out of section D then, request administrative review if the administration is denied. So if we're leaving that section, then I have to, per Ms. Felton's explanation that students want to clarify what are their appeal rights, it seems to me it would fit here under request and approval process. Otherwise, you need to take out the administrative review. You could just say, and I'm not sure it would be unreasonable to say, the principal's in control of this building, the principal's decision is final. Is that, you could leave it there, in which case I would take out this section, under D, and we just don't put that in there.
May we hear from former principals? our administrators, former principals. I mean, I just think the principal knows the building. I don't know if the next level knows exactly what's unique about every building. Ms. Wood, else would you share? Or-
I would defer to the building principal. I would defer to the building principal.
Yeah,
I think
so-
this is a situation that can be addressed in-house,
Yeah,
knowing that the principal will work with the students and do everything they can to make it happen. So the thought that it would then be appealed, I think it should stop at the building level with the principal.
I agree.
Mr. Bones, so can you turn on your microphone so the folks at home can hear you? Thank you.
Maybe my word appeal is too strong for this conversation, because when you say appeal, I guess it goes in a lot of venues. But if a student submit and ask for demonstration information and they say no, why is the no there? Can I have some sort of, conversation? Is that possible? I'm not saying go through a whole court procedure. It's just that it's been appealed, so what do I need to do to make it appropriate and conducive for your school, for your building? This is all I'm asking. And I'm not trying to get in the weeds, but even with this city, if you're gonna have a march with the city, or if you're gonna have any kind of parade, anything that's going to be involved with the city, they have forms that you fill out, that you do it with. And on the form, they let you know whether you can or cannot. I'm just looking out for the rights of the student, that we do it right. That's all I'm saying.
So
And
what
we're
I'm
moving
hear-
to a climate that we need to know what their rights are.
So what I'm hearing you say, Ms. Felton, is not just a flat denial, rationale behind
Right.
why it was
And that's the
denied.
review.
I think that's
Yeah.
two different things, and I agree with you, that can be incorporated easily. So if the request is denied, that a, reason for the denial be provided with the opportunity, as you indicated, to fix what was necessarily needed to be
Absolutely.
fixed. And
Yeah.
I will tell you, that's what, whether it be the principal or the administrator in the building, that's what they always are going to do. And I was sitting here thinking, Miss Linetti, and I don't know if we still have this in the building, it's been a long time for me, but we used to have an activity form, an activity request form that students would fill out for any type of activity. Most of the time it was for dance. But why create something if we already have it? I think there's an opportunity to use something that we may already have in the building, but I will tell you, I have not been in the building since 2014. I'm not for sure if we still have it. We still have it. Okay, so to me, this would be no different. You're requesting to have an activity in the building, you fill that form out, and if it, for whatever reason, needs further discussion, more information, or if it's denied, it was always cited, there was a reason.
Yeah, but that's what I
on there.
thought administrators review, that you would get with the administration and review, why wasn't this? And the principal would say, oh, because you didn't even list a location. Let's talk about location. So see, that's what I thought for was exactly what you're saying, Ms. Felton, is you're having an administrative review of why you were denied.
Ms. Weens, and I took out the appeal and added potential discussion. This is under 3 upon approval, but this section said, E, the principal designee reserves the right to approve the demonstration that if it determines, I think this should, if it determines that are not consistent with the school division policy and regulations, or which may be disruptive, and then you could add an F, the principal designee will provide an explanation why the demonstration is denied.
I mean, yeah, I still think that's in 4, but I can't imagine a principal just saying no. Of course, the principal's gonna explain and work with it. And
Well-
that's what the review is. You're reviewing with the administration about the demonstration. But if you wanna add, the principal will provide an explanation, where would that go under?
I'm not just quite right here, but
F.
you had upon approval, then you had
Okay.
the reasons, and then we had, they could reserve the right to, deny, or this could just be a for, I guess, you know, that, sorry, it's formatting. Maybe it's for. But, my numbering's off here, but,
Are we still under E, 4, or we moved?
yeah, I was leaving under E, cause this is where your approval process is, so you'd have 1, 2, 3, this is supposed to be 4, but it's not letting me. do
It's
four.
F. Isn't it F?
I'm sorry, what did I say? I'm sorry, you're right, it's F.
It's F, request and approval process. It would have to be a 4 because 3 is talking about approval. I would think.
But going back to what Ms. Woodhouse said about the activity, and I remember those forms. A form exists. The will is there. Why create the will again? I agree. We just modify it because it is talking about student-led demonstration, not just an activity. This is a student-led demonstration. So I can accept that and it being modified to what we're asking for this policy. This is it's almost a brand new policy. And it is for the rights of the students. We're focusing on keeping the students as the focus of this policy. Thank you.
Okay, so do we agree to add that as a,
I got rid of the 5 when I do, I'm just having to.
Are we still under E or are we moved
This is
to
F, so that was
F?
under F.
yeah, that
Okay.
was under F. Request and approval process, F.
This one, it's under breast. And then step 4 is if it's denied, there will be an explanation.
Yeah, so we're just adding a 4 because we only have 3. We're adding a 4 that the kids will be provided an explanation. Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Let's see, E, F, G. Okay, school responsibilities.
School administrators will, 1, provide reasonable guidance regarding time, place, and manner, ensure student safety and supervision, apply this policy equitably and consistently. 4, communicate expectations to staff and students in advance, and support opportunities for constructive civic learning connected to the event when applicable. And no school resources or employees agents will be used to promote student-led demonstrations.
Ms. Felton,
Reads well. Thank you.
Mr. Bonesteel?
Mr. Bones, can you make sure your microphone's on?
I'm
Scoot?
good with it.
Thank you.
Ms. Weems, do you mind? I apologize. Can we there's just one that gives me a little pause.
Okay,
Is, again, we always want to ensure student safety and supervision. But in a significant student demonstration, that can become a challenge with how you utilize your staff. I'm just sharing this from a practical standpoint because you may have some kids that walk out, some kids that stay in a room. So I don't know if there's language that can, it just gives me a little, that to me seems like 100% guarantee that you're going to ensure student safety and supervision. And based on the size of that demonstration, that could be a little bit of a challenge on a collective nature to do that. I don't want to go deep in the weeds, but I think you can see where if I'm a school of 2,000 students and 1,500 of them walk out to a space
yeah,
and 500 do not, I don't have the security staff in that moment and others and administratively necessarily say, I can ensure at that moment everybody's safety and supervision. And that will be the anxiety that is the anxiety we feel as building principals, why it's so important to have that dialogue with students prior to. So I just share that as I see that that's a hard insurance in every situation for a principal to guarantee.
yeah, I agree.
I've worked a little on the line, we could take it out, or what I was suggesting the language would be could read, reasonably address student safety and supervision based on the circumstances. And again, Mr. Delaney's pointing out, there's no guarantee. We will do the best we can under the circumstances.
Reasonably address student safety.
I mean, whether it's in this policy or not, that is your obligation. That's your number one obligation. So, we would do that anywhere, whether it's in this policy. We could just take it out if that's Mr. Delaney's concern, because you're going to have to do that.
Okay, colleagues, do you want to, replace ensure student safety and supervision with reasonably address student safety and supervision based on the circumstance, or do you just want to take it all out?
Listen to Mr. Delaney. Mr. Delaney, does that read, or can you digest that, or would you like to?
Well, again, I'm trying to bring you from the perspective of sitting in the seat of a principal. If I cannot ensure 100% safety and security of that building, I'm going to deny that student's request.
Okay.
And I think if you're putting that on me to say you're going to ensure or reasonably address, I'm going to be risk averse in signing off on saying, I'm fine with this.
Okay.
Because if it goes a different level, it's going to come back to me on why did you sign off on this, knowing that this could have security implications. So in my mind, not having it there would give me some comfort. That yes, principals are always thinking safety and security. But if you're telling me I have to ensure it, it increases the likelihood that I'm going to deny that application.
Yes, sir.
I would ask Ms. Linetti to, if you could address his concern in writing that, because I do understand your,
If
Your
we take it
concerns.
out, it's not gonna make any difference. They know
Okay.
they have to do that. That is their number one responsibility. They're going to do that anyway. And so, whether it's here or not, that's not a concern for me.
I say take it out.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole dilemma of all these demonstrations during school hours is safety. I mean, that's just, you know, when it's during school hours, that is a huge undertaking. And, you know, by law, we don't have to do any of this, correct?
You
But
do
we're
have
choosing-
to
we're
allow
choosing
some
to.
amount of First Amendment rights on there.
Yeah.
But you always have in the First Amendment realm, the ability to control time, place, and manner when you're a government, because you have to make reasonable things to make sure that normal public business can happen. So you do have to allow some amount of First Amendment rights to take place. You don't necessarily have to allow a walkout of something that will disrupt the building of that sort, but only, my reluctance to give you an answer is the First Amendment is so large as to what they're doing, that it could be hard to answer this question. You do have to allow them to express their rights consistent with what the current law is, and I'm gonna tell you right now, this law is changing very quickly for us. We're all struggling to keep up with where First Amendment rights are, so, yes, you do have to allow some First Amendment activity.
Well, I mean, I think too, and what Ms. Felton said, she couldn't find much on when she Googled it, but I think that, you know, we're choosing to allow this and kind of going beyond, you know, what is required. So, but, I mean, and I just wanted people to realize that.
But it is a choice, but when you start off with this policy statement, talking about, the First Amendment of the Constitution, our students, they're all into that First Amendment rights, and they know that this is one of their rights to do and to have. So my whole, my focus is the students, and number two, being proactive. It's not that they aren't working on it, but being proactive, that we be in the right place at the right time, at the right moment for the things that are happening now. They're not tomorrow, they're happening right now, and we need to protect ourselves, as Mr. Delaney is saying about the principals wanting to protect it as well.
Okay, so G, school responsibilities, we took number 2 out and renumbered everything. H, third-party involvement, third parties may not be involved in or attend student-led demonstrations, and we have defined third parties on a previous page. Mr. Bonesteel, are you good with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay, I'm good with that. Ms. Felton?
Just for thought entertainment, if you want to entertain this, for H, a student or student-led group of the school must be the designated organizers for the event. No third-party group should enter school grounds for the demonstration. B, third party provided resources are permitted. However, they must be reviewed for alignment with Virginia Beach City Public School curriculum and approved by the designated administrator or teacher before distributing the demonstration. I'm reading this only because the student asked me to do so. They felt that H, third-party involvement, was just too short, and they wanted a little bit more in there, but I told them that what we did have in H, we moved it to another slot to make it more sustainable with more substance. But that third-party thing has been eliminated, so I read it for you students, so I want to know that it had gotten read. We just eliminated the third-party all entirely.
Is the concern, and what I'm hearing, what the student's suggesting is the word involvement, whereas we were worried about third parties showing up or using that. Is the concern that nationwide, there's a group that's saying we're going to do, I don't know, drunk driving, and they're using those materials that they wouldn't be able to use materials of that group? I know what our main concern was, we didn't want to see third parties coming into our buildings and taking over and running an event that should have been student-led. And I'm not quite, I'd have to look a little bit more closely what your students' suggestion there was, but if your concern is we didn't create, we want to use materials that have been created by somebody else, I don't know if that's what you're trying to get at. Is it the word involvement that's the concern here?
Not necessarily the environment. After hashing it out in the beginning with Ms. Weeds and how you explained it, I think that's going to be acceptable and appropriate. I just needed to read that.
Yes, thank you, yes, thank you. All right, so third party, H is fine as is. I, prohibited conduct.
Demonstrations may not, 1, disrupt instruction or school operations, 2, block access to school facilities or transportation, 3, threaten, harass, or intimidate others, 4, damage property, 5, compel participation by others, and 6, interfere with the safety, privacy, or rights of individuals.
Ms. Felton, do you have any words?
I'm good.
Okay, I'm good.
J is consequences. Students who violate this policy or engage in disruptive conduct may be subject to discipline consistent with the student code of conduct. Students may not be disciplined solely for expressing political or social viewpoints in a lawful, non-disruptive manner.
All right, Ms. Felton, I think you said you were gonna speak on J later. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'd just like to say, I like the verbiage in J, the way that it reads. Students who violate this policy or engage in disruptive conduct may be subject to discipline consistent with the student code of conduct. Students shall not be disciplined solely for expressing political or social viewpoints in a lawful, disruptive manner. This is appropriate. This is where it come in, and I was solely with it that this protect our principals as well, and I think it should be placed in any other student-led process or policy that we're going to have. It speaks about, and it does protect the principal as well. I was just speaking on it because I like it. I like the way it reads, and it reads well. I just like to see it across the spectrum of all of our other things that have to do with students.
All right,
Pretty
thank you.
much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, J, as is. K, non-endorsement.
It's just simple. Approval of a demonstration does not constitute endorsement of the school board, school administration, staff of the content or viewpoints. So again, we're not, the approval is not a content-based decision, so we're gonna let you make a decision, but our approving it doesn't say we agree with your point of view. We're just
Right.
allowing you to have your point of view.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, everybody good with that one?
Yep.
All right, moving on to L, and you spoke on this earlier, LB, if you wanna say anything else.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I used 5-66 and 5-66.1, which is our student directory information. So under 3, it actually says policy 5-XX. It's supposed to be 5-66, so I apologize for that. And then just basic FERPA information just throughout, just to make this more of what y'all were asking for the last meeting of making sure that we covered media based on what we already do.
All right, any comments on L?
Just asking just for, confirm, when we place this on our site, FERBA, student codes of conduct, those particular things are hyperlinked.
Yes, we can definitely make sure they are.
Right, thank you.
Okay. So, Ms. Linetti, you've got all those changes that we've agreed to, so do you have any other questions, Cammie?
No, and it does, and I think the next one is student assemblies. We sent that back from the school board to look at. Based on what we're doing here, I'm not sure if we need to incorporate anything in that, but just remember that I think Mrs. Felton made a, comment once or twice. We just, when we look at student assemblies, we may have to decide if there's something in this policy we need to coordinate between the two policies.
Okay, well, should we just hold on this vote to move it forward till after we discuss the assembly one then? Is that okay?
That might be not
Okay.
about it in
Is
case
that
the
okay
change.
with my colleagues?
Concerning, say it again, I missed it.
Well, this is, if we need to change anything with the assembly one, you know, there used to be one that would have a change with this one that we just went over, the demonstration one. We don't want to vote on it, then in 5 minutes change it again. And so
But
we said,
my suggestion might be look at student assemblies, make sure that there's nothing you feel like need to be consistent between the two policies. If there's any change, then we can come back and
okay,
vote
let's
on
just
it.
go ahead and look at then at 540, student-led assemblies. And again, this is not demonstration, it is assemblies.
As you remember, before you had them together, then we tried to separate them out. So now this would just read, student-led assemblies would be A, generally. Student assemblies are an important part of the school program and provide opportunities to support learning, promote civic engagement, celebrate student achievement, and build community. And then we pull out the rest of the language that was there. Then we go to B, which would be definitions. And a student assembly is a planned, school-approved gathering of students occurring during the instructional day or on school property for educational, cultural, or community-building purposes. Assemblies may be school-sponsored or school-led with prior approval. And you would take out the rest of the language. And I think our numbering is a little off on here, but in the secondary schools, attendance at school-sponsored assemblies during school hours may be optional. Principal will decide if attendance is required. The decision will be based on criteria that the student body will benefit from the presentation or the necessity of imparting information to all students. That's the only definitions we have. Are there any questions or discussion about that?
Okay, Ms. Felton?
I do, thank you. And again, I'd like to just reiterate, where you have when you're reading student assemblies, student-led assemblies, I'd like to keep that consistent with student-led assemblies. Quick question, Ms. Linetti. Do we have, policies for our general assembly, like when the principal calls us assembly? Do we have a policy for that at all? Does that exist?
I don't think so. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember there being a separate one on assemblies because I would assume that's just programming or curriculum.
So it's just a university just thought that principal can just call an assembly when needed.
I am not aware of a separate policy on that. I would assume that's the right of a principal. So like you had a bad incident at school and we need to re-talk to everybody about, not certain kinds of conduct's not acceptable at school. I don't know that we have a policy that say the principal can do. I think that's just within her authority as a principal to do.
No, the only reason I asked the question is it was asked by the students. They wanted to know, not that they wanted to do any kind of a revolt in a sense, but they just wanted to know it was something else that they could lean on and compare to their assemblies as well. Their other concern was why was it necessary to take out all of the other information below that, allowing with guaranteed citizens the right to freedom of speech, the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, also guarantee the right to assemble peacefully, subject only to restriction where the exercise of this right would substantially interfere with the rights and freedom of other citizens. Time should be made available for orderly and peaceful student assembly. The terms orderly and peaceful refers exclusively to mean that topic of a controversial nature should not be dealt with and argued during such assembly. Why would they just want to know why was all of that taken out and shortened to what it is?
And I think our understanding when we were doing this, and quite honestly, this might be where the title needs to be changed. My interpretation of student assemblies was this was something the administration decided was necessary. We're gonna talk about the code of student conduct. We're gonna talk every 15 minutes, the drunk driving issues on it, that it was the students are pulled out of whatever else they're doing to attend this. So maybe the term, and then those that the students wanted to run were going to be demonstrations as opposed to an assembly. So I think we were trying to find out a student, difference between student-led and the school has determined that we all need to get together for a certain reason. So maybe the title shouldn't be student-led assemblies, because student-led is going to be a demonstration most likely. I don't know if I've explained that correctly for the administration, if I missed anything. I'm not sure, I mean, I'm sure students could be involved in an assembly of some sort, but I'm not sure it's actually student-led. I think the
Well-
intent was this would be the administration, the school did the.
I think where the confusion lies is by combining student-led assemblies and demonstrations. What we just talked about is demonstrations.
Right, that's what we
And when
wanted to
you put the
separate it.
terms in there such as vigils, sit-ins, that's an assembly of students into an area. So my confusion when I read these two things is our general school-based understanding of what an assembly is, it's on the calendar.
Yeah.
We organize kids to come during that time. It could involve a talent show, it could involve a guest speaker. Many times the student body president might lead that assembly under the guidance of a school sponsor or the student activities coordinator or another adult. I think confusion lies because we put student-led assemblies, changing that into two separate policies, where before I think it was student-led assemblies / demonstration, correct?
Yeah,
So now to me, we just did demonstration, and that X's out student-led assemblies, because it captures it in the examples you gave of what can be allowed to occur in a student demonstration. A school-based assembly is not this. And so when I read this and then see language in there that then says it must be aligned, if I'm still reading it as I saw it before, aligned to content standards and those type of things, that's a completely different discussion. So I think confusion lies between trying to define, if I'm a student reading this, I'm saying, so I can do my own assembly if I do these things.
right, yeah,
And I can demonstrate here.
Right.
And a school building is going, no, we schedule school assemblies on topics.
Yeah.
And a student, that's where that form comes in as well, where a student says, can we have an assembly on this topic? And it goes through the student activities coordinator that works through the principal.
so
I-
these should
when
be
I
just
read these, I-
student assemblies.
Well, what
Or
if,
just-
what if it would be, let me try to, because I think here's what I think Mr. Delaney explained, what if it's school assemblies for students?
Yeah, that's what I think, school assemblies for students. Or student assemblies,
Well, I
that
ju-
sounds better.
Is that way, it takes out the difference between the students want to run one as opposed to, we're gonna do honor roll assembly, we're gonna do something.
and you're just, if I'm over speaking,
No,
please stop
don't
me,
we want
because
you-
I'm coming from the lens of a school
That's what we're gonna
level,
hear.
and also going to be sitting here listening to a conversation on the school demonstration policy. And I don't think we want to convolute these two things, because right now what we're discussing is of what would be a school-based assembly is not the discussion on student-led demonstrations. We
Right,
don't
they're not
have
the
a
same.
policy on what a school is allowed to do to create an assembly at their school, elementary, middle, or high. To my knowledge, Cammie, I didn't read one.
I'm
where
not
there's an
aware of
assembly
one.
policy.
Because you just leave it up to the building administrator.
The building does, the
because
PTA
they
wants to
know-
do
yeah,
something, we're gonna do
and
a
it's up to the
holiday
principal.
concert, we're gonna, hey, we've got alumni coming back that we think could really have some impact and empowerment of some sort. And students can request those an assembly. When we pair these two things together, it's not the same that we're now talking about in terms of an assembly. So my opinion, and I can be wrong here, but I believe you've covered some of what I heard say students about their own assembly is in that
Yeah.
demonstration, student-led demonstration. So if I want to do a student-led demonstration, when we assemble in the commons area on this topic that we've had, that's, I think, what students are saying, can we assemble?
Yeah, so
All right, so
you're,
let
I
me
mean, do we
throw
even need
monkey-
this?
Well, let me throw a monkey wrench into it, I'm going where you are. this is in section 5, which is students. So if it's just gonna be school assembly, we're gonna have honor roll, we're gonna have band, maybe that's in the curriculum section if we need it. Because schools should already have the right to do that.
Ms. Woodhouse?
So, Ms. Linetti, Mr. Delaney, what he was basically saying, when you decided to pull it apart, it was never meant to be pulled apart. It was capturing student-led assemblies / demonstration in one. When you pulled it apart, it became two different things. Because again, we've been having assemblies for years. They are hosted by the school is in charge of it, and it is tied to curriculum, unless it's done obviously after school or before school. That's why the students had so many questions, Ms. Felton, on why this information was deleted. It wasn't deleted. It's in 5-39. So you have two topics, that when you try to pull them apart, they no longer fit. And so instead of trying to force policy 540, I think you drop 540 and you have everything that you need in 5-39.
Is there any reason students would lead a school assembly for students, that they would say, Mr. Delaney, I have this great idea and I want an assembly?
Yeah, so the word lead is what you would have to define. So lead might be they have the mic, the entire component of that assembly, but they're gonna work with a student activities coordinator and another adult on what's the appropriate way to deliver that and help them gain that skill. So a code of conduct assembly, which sometimes can be not the best assembly to go to, but there are examples where students, upperclassmen, have led that assembly with things you're not allowed to do.
Right.
And they do it as a peer-to-peer discussion rather than Principal Delaney up there shaking his finger at them. So, but that wouldn't be where I go, hey, you guys plan this and we'll bring everybody together and we'll just let it roll with whatever you've decided. But it happens often that our principals want a student to lead the assembly so that their families or others can see them in that role. But it's always going to be organized in conjunction and collaboration with an adult staff member to ensure it's of the highest quality as well.
So then we're back to Mrs. Williams' question, do you even need that? Because with it being, you're right, as we're having the Code of Student Conduct required assembly at the beginning of the year, the fact that we're gonna let, this school's gonna let students be in charge of running it, would be a decision you made, as opposed to anything else. The students said, we wanna talk about drunk driving, let's say, and that falls under demonstration, then, that.
Not
or-
necessarily, because we've done that with every 15 minutes. I think,
Yeah.
I think a key component in both of these topics of student-led events, we love to have them lead them, we do. It's a huge component of their academic growth. But it requires adult intervention and supervision, because we also know there's gonna be another group that did not like what they presented on. And we will have to answer to that group as well, and we need to be clear on supporting that student-led demonstration or assembly with clear how we were involved in the process, which in my experience, I have had those conversations with parents that did not like something that occurred.
Right.
And I was able to articulate to them why it was okay that this went on and how we supported their child through that process as well. And that is the reality of what the school has to respond to. Those that are in favor and those that are not, they want to just make sure everything was handled in a fair manner. And I think, so I'm trying to operationalize this. I just think the word assembly creates confusion on what do we typically say is assembly at a school? And that's it.
All
We're
right,
gonna
so
have to-
I'm gonna go way back, to rethinking, so if we were to go back to 539, so this is brand new, we didn't have a 539 before. And not, instead of doing 539, it becomes an amendment to 540, and it said, it could say student-led demonstrations and assemblies, and I'd have to explain that, so you'd be treating an assembly and a demonstration as the same thing, it's student-led, or do we want the word assembly in here? And go, so we'd be going back to not having two different policies, the concept would be something that's student-led. Or do you even need this? So that's a bit bigger question.
Could I speak at this point? That was the reason I asked you, did we have a policy for our general assemblies as a principal called, and you said you really don't know anything about it. This is what the student was asking. And it is a thought that we are overlapping. We are overlapping, and I get that as well. So I'll ask my colleagues, since this is coming up in this manner, we should in the future, if not sooner or later, look at the policies for clubs. And I think that will, because as we're speaking now, we have a couple of clubs that's going on in some of our high schools. And do we have the criteria for those as well? We need to, because the students were, well, some of them a little bit concerned about student-led assembly as well. Where does that curtail how much they can and cannot do or talk about? So I think the next step is we are doing a student demonstration. So now some of this falls under student clubs. Maybe that should be something that we should look at and investigate as well, because it crosses over student assemblies to me. At this point, the way that we're talking crosses over to students' clubs and things that are happening.
So,
Yeah, I mean, we do have a policy on, a totally separate,
It is.
pretty detailed policy on school clubs and what the criteria have to be, but yeah, we can look at that at another time if requested. But, okay, so the deal is, we've pretty much gone over the student demonstrations, and we have that how we like it. Do we, the three of us, think we need policy 540 at all? And Mr. Delaney and Ms. Woodhouse, do you think that we need it at all? Because if it's, I mean, it's building, it's pretty much site-based according to what that principal, what type of assemblies he or she wants to go on.
Is
with input from
540 the one we
students.
just spoke about for a lengthy time?
No,
No.
39 was the
539.
one. for
Okay,
the
yes, I would say we do
demonstrations.
not need that 540
Yeah.
school assemblies.
Yeah, I don't-
well, here's,
Get rid
then
of it.
my suggestion would be, why don't we just completely replace current 540, take what is now 539 and make it 540, and it would be student demonstrations.
Just student.
So we'll just get rid of what's here, and I'm gonna have to rewrite it out for you. So I would pull out what's in here, we would replace it with what we were looking back at, and this is kind of a little confusing.
And what is the
So
we
we would take-
rationale of doing it just listing a different number?
Well, 540 is where it was, 540 is the existing one, we don't have
Okay,
anything
okay.
to 539, so
Okay.
this would just replace that one. Instead of creating two policies, we'll go back to one policy. We're not gonna split assemblies and demonstrations, where the focus will be there. Now, obviously, we'll bring up student clubs and issues at another time, unless for some reason you wanna look at that together with this, otherwise, we'll have to bring that back to another time, because that's
Yeah.
not in our
Yeah,
pipeline
we'll
right
put it
now.
I'll put it on the agenda, Ms. Phelps.
Yes, thank you.
So, okay, so, and what would be the name of it? You said student assemblies, but here we have student-led assemblies. I mean
We wouldn't have
demonstrations, I mean demonstrations.
Yeah, so unless, now, interesting, when I'm looking at the definitions, I'm bringing it back to 539. Under section C, definition, demonstration and organized assembly of students. So that says assembly, their definition includes assembly there of students. Now,
I read that as an assembly, as a gathering.
grouping,
It's
yeah.
not, yeah, that's what Mr., Delaney was saying, when you assemble, you gather. So I don't think that's in conflict at all.
right, and that's what I'm saying,
yeah.
that sort of incorporates the concept. So I'm not sure how important it is to you, but let's say, Mr. Delaney, I would like, as a group of students, we have a great idea on how we're going to do code of student conduct this year. That's an assembly, and we'd like to act it out in interpretive dance, and so we're going to come to you and do that. That's still an assembly, but it could fall under demonstration, or it could just simply be within the power of the school to allow them to do it that way. I don't know how important it is for you to define out those events that are normal school assemblies. So other than that, then then I would just take what we have now is 539 and make it the replacement
Make
for
it-
540.
Make it 540, and the name of it is student-led demonstrations.
Right, and then we don't talk
Okay.
about assemblies.
Agree.
Okay, so all those in favor of changing the number, just incorporating the 539 that we discussed at length to 540, and the name of that would be student-led demonstrations with the changes that we made.
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Bonesteel, motion made by Ms. Felton to, approve this and to send it on to the school board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then that will formally withdraw your prior vote on 540, which was to make it an assembly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good work,
All right, that was
colleagues.
a lot of work. Let me see, let's go back here. So we should be moving on to, oops, sorry, I lost you here.
All
So
right.
that should be, 395, really long policy, but, and I can't even tell you the last time here we go. You were required to adopt this policy many years ago. There had been changes to the law, a little bit, we formatted it. So again, I can't even, the last time we did a public charter school with Green Run Collegiate, charter school, they put in there. So this is just to bring it consistent with the law and the way we're currently doing policy, the very old policy that we had. So we had a habit in the past of just putting paragraphs. You'll see me in probably putting numbers or letters on paragraphs. That's pretty much what we did here. And a couple times there were some updates to the law, but nothing significant. So it looks horrible, but it's really just compliant with the law and updating our formatting.
And I think, I don't see the date here, but I think, it had been like 11 or 12 or something years.
really old.
So why did, because I think we have two that
11
were
years.
really late. So did we just accidentally miss the 5-year thing?
I know this was given to me early in the year and I sat on it for a while because it was a monster one to go through. But yeah, I think it just got lost in the process. And
okay.
because it's one we don't very often deal with, it
Right.
wasn't a priority.
Okay, so this is total compliance with the
So
law.
there's total compliance, no real,
Nothing.
thought someone asking anything to be changed, just a.
It looks horrible, but it's really not. It's
Annual.
not significant changes.
All right, do I have a motion to accept 549?
So move.
And, I'll second it and we'll bring it forward to the school board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So, 395 will go to the school board on information. Mr. Bowen still just had to step out, briefly to make a, phone call.
Should put you to 626, which is evaluation of new.
No, 549,
Five.
Oh, sorry.
interscholastic
Oops,
competition.
jumped a foot too far. Interscholastic competition under section 5 again. This came up to us, a clarification on how we handle appeals. We've had a couple of them. They don't come up too often, but to make it clear that we didn't want them to come up to the school board. It's always been, in this limited eligibility. So the way it will read is under Virginia High School League, the school board endorses membership by its high schools in the Virginia High School League Incorporated, VHSL, that imposes higher scholastic standards in the VHL as set forth this part. The school board authorizes the superintendent or designee to make decisions on appeals regarding transfers or eligibility in those matters where the school board and or the superintendent are designated by VHSL rules and procedures as the appeal decider. The school board does not intend to hear appeals of VHSL rules or procedures regarding transfers or eligibility. When you read the VHSL rules, it will say either school or superintendent. For us, obviously, there's a bigger difference that we separate out our levels on there. And to make it clear, we've always had the superintendent. We actually have another layer in our VHLs. We have, because we're all one district. So we have an appeal layer and then it goes to the superintendent. Our concern in looking at this with eligibility decisions, the ability to get the school board together in a timely manner doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
And, you know, if eligibility and vesting started tomorrow, the chances of me getting a lot of you together to get that decision made is not going to happen in that time period. It's more reasonable to have the superintendent manage this, and that's how it's been handled in the past. We were made aware of a certain language in there which VHSL lists both, and so we just wanted to clarify it wasn't going to go to the school board. Doesn't change anything we've done in the past, it just eliminates us having to call you all together for a special
Yeah.
meeting on December 31st so a student can do a competition.
That was my next question to you, because I want to know, has anything come up or occurred that we had to weigh in on concerning the VHSL?
No, that doesn't generally happen, but I could see how if somebody looked at it and said, well, it says school board or superintendent, I now want it to go to the school board, and by the way, if I want to do that competition, you need, at least 6 of you together to make that decision before the competition starts tomorrow. That's just not practical for us to pull off, so, we just thought this was more reasonable. Since VHL allows each one or the other, we wanted to clarify it wasn't gonna go to you, and this is, we thought was fair for the students.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, do I have a motion to accept policy 549, interscholastic competition, and move it on to the school board on information?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, that moves on. Policy 626, evaluation of new and existing programs.
These are generally minor, what I would call Scrivener changes. They're out here, just clarifying.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to go through them. We did a few formatting changes to make it consistent, but nothing that I would consider significant here.
Well, and the main thing too, we had to take out the PPMC
Correct. there.
because we don't have that anymore, so that was a change, yeah. All right, I'm good with that. Any concerns or questions on 626? Okay, do I have a motion to accept that and move it on to school board on information?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Felton,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 626 moves on to school board. Policy 644, school counseling.
No recommended changes. This is just up for a 5-year review. It's a little late.
How many years? 5?
2017 was the last time we
That
looked
was
at
the
it.
other one that was so.
I just-
I know, Mr. Jamieson's like, it's about time. All right, and Mr. Jamieson, you looked at this, obviously. Okay,
Okay, Mr. Jameson.
all right, good, thank you.
All right.
Okay, no concerns or changes. Okay, all those in favor, do I have a motion
So
to send
moved.
644 to school board for information?
Second.
And, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, school counseling moves on for information. $677.
There are no recommended changes. This is literacy and response to intervention screening and service. There are no recommended changes.
So who would come forth about the literacy and response department?
I think that's normally Ms. Colucci and who's
Yes.
soon walked out. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Delaney, you have anything to say towards this? I heard your voice in the back.
I'm a big fan of literacy, Ms. Feldman, this is what I'll say. But no, Dr. Colucci, yes.
Yes, you reviewed it, yeah. All right, do we have a policy to accept 677 and pass it on to the school board on information?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Felton.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor?
Aye.
677 goes on information. All right, other business, we have a regulation here.
Ms. Felton mentioned at the last meeting, there was some concern about clarifying video surveillance, and we did a lot of work, and well, I didn't do a lot of work. Leanne did a lot of work in her section, so Ms. Turnbull worked with us on that. We brought in, Laura Beth, who does the FERPA thing. Videos are pretty constant for us in student discipline, they're constant in FOIA issues, and we wanted to go back and verify, we'd always been very strict about it. I will say for the record, all school records belong to the school division. They do not belong to individuals. So there's always concern that those are my records. They're not your records. You're allowed access to them. Then we have to segregate when we're looking at those records. Those are what I would call outdoor building type of records, building videos, the grounds, the hallways. Those aren't really issues for us. And those that might actually show a student on there. So that's where we're segregating. Once we're looking at students, then we're worried about the FERPA rules on confidentiality. So we have a lot of rules that we have to jump through to figure out what the record is. So going through video surveillance, we didn't change a whole lot in the section. Why is this coming up? Why, do we have changes there? Anna, do we have another?
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether
So
it's
the
not
original, the original
showing-
one that, yeah, so the
Okay.
original one that y'all had, that y'all got was before we made the changes, and then you
Okay.
all have the ones from Ms.
Okay,
Turnbull.
I'm sorry, yeah, okay. Do we have that on camera? So anybody watching camera would not, you'd have to go online to take a look at this. We did update some changes to that, so let's see, do I have that in front of me?
So our 364-2 that you have at our table, LB.
Yeah,
is
so I'm
the-
gonna borrow that.
so what
Okay.
changes? Okay, but we don't have any red line.
Yeah, sorry, this is not red line, so let me go through.
She did. Give it to me.
All right, so let me go through.
Hold it up.
Okay,
Was it the last
Is-
minute
do you have the
handout? It was
updated
the
one on
last
there?
minute.
hold on a second, let me see if we put it in. I don't see the updated one here, so I only see the one that was in the package to be added anymore. All right, I'm just gonna talk you through where it shows up.
Cammy, I'm sorry, Ms. Turnbull may have those copies. Would you like to provide the red line copies?
I believe they have the red line copies, the school board members, do you not have the red line
I
copies?
don't.
Okay,
Miss Felton has extra pull, evidently, she got the she got the right copy.
Now, Kimmy,
Is that this one?
Yes, I think so. Thank you,
I think
pure accidental.
thank you, only the chair didn't get a copy,
but,
it shows you used that.
that's right.
okay, so I'm gonna have to talk to people on camera, what's going on. So in section B, the only thing we're so we're not changing anything, not doing the introductory paragraph, we're not changing. Section A, we're not changing. Section B, the only change is under 2B, right here where it says, only an administrator authorized staff members, and we put comma, contractors, and the reason I'm putting that is because you have school bus contractors that we're looking at our records, so we contract with a company that does that, so that's why I was adding the word contractors there. The significant changes will happen in C. So C is now going to read, and you've got the, section 1. Video surveillance may be used for inquiries and proceedings related to law enforcement, comma, administrative investigations, lawsuits, and student and employee hearings. Video used as evidence for law enforcement purposes, comma, administrative investigations or lawsuits may not be altered. An administrative investigation could be student discipline, it also could be child protective services, OSHA violations, or things that happen. And those are actually fairly common for us, so we want to clarify that. 2 is videotape or film of students is considered part of a student's educational record, and therefore viewing of a videotape must adhere to regulations of the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which we refer to as FERPA. So A, we would strike out the first sentence and would now read, a video that is an educational record may only be disclosed to individuals who have a legitimate educational interest in viewing it. Adult students or parents, guardians of minor students may view a video when it is directly related to their child or themselves being the adult students, even if other students appear in the recording. That is a change in how we've explained in the past, so we're now making that clear. The school division is not required to obtain consent from the parents of those other students. However, disclosing the video to any individual who does not have a legitimate educational interest and who is not the parent, guardian, or eligible student does require prior written consent. We've advised in the past, if you had 5 kids on a bus and there was a fight, unless all the parents agreed, you shouldn't be turning over the record because there's somebody's record on there, allowing them to view it, because you would be allowing someone to see your child's record. The interpretation of this has changed a little at the U.S. Department of Education, so we are loosening it up, that we don't need to go to all 5 parents and get consent, but those 5 parents can look at it. But if you're the nosy neighbor down the street and just wants to see the record, you don't have an interest in that record, so you don't have it. It would only be the students who that record applies to that could see it. We don't need consent. So we were working with the schools to clarify that.
So in that instance,
Oh, I'm sorry.
these cannot be FOIA. Can it be FOIA?
Generally, if we've determined that it is a student record, then it's not. It can be FOIA'd by the people who have an interest in it. So you can use FERPA or FOIA. If it's your student, you can use both procedures for that. If the press called and said, we want to see it, and we've determined it's an educational record, unless we had consent of the parents, we would not turn that over. There are some exceptions, what we would call like a hallway. If you're looking at a football game, there's no discipline, there's nobody's privacy rights doing that, we might turn that over. So if we had, let's say, a student assembly, and we wanted to turn that over because the picture was on our camera, and we determined that wasn't violating anybody's rights, we could turn that in. So you could FOIA that, and we might determine that there was nobody's rights were violated, we might turn it over under those circumstances.
So where does CPS, Child Protective Services, where do they fall in?
They're going to have a legitimate educational interest because they're protecting the rights of the student or law enforcement. So they're coming in to investigate. We want to see what happened to the student in the setting. And they do by law have a right to look at that.
So FERPA protect our students from, like, if someone said, well, you know, my child go to the school, I want to FOIA this. The child wasn't on that bus, but they wanted to FOIA this. So would FERPA,
That, you've just identified exactly what the ongoing problem is. At that point, if you're calling and say, I want to see this bus, because I want to see what some other kids did on this bus, but your child's on the bus, you have a right to see the educational record of your child. Doesn't give you a right to see other people's children. So that's a FOIA request. When it came to us, if Laura Beth got that, she looked at that and said, I don't see this, your child doesn't even ride this bus, or your child doesn't even go to this school.
Right.
Now you're making a FOIA request for that. So we might have to look at it and determine whether it was releasable or not. But that wouldn't be a FERPA request. FERPA relies on your definition of a student's educational record, and that's individual to the student. All right, so the second section would be B. It's just a simple change that a copy of a video recording can be released to the appropriate authorities in accordance with applicable law, and that's sort of your CPS, so that's the only change there. And C, a videotape of athletic events or concerts or plays or similar events. That's all we added there. So that's just anything we didn't account for. Other than that, the only thing we're going to change is in addition under the legal references, there is actually a state regulation 8 VAC 20671-670 that actually talks about videotaping. So we've made that reference in there. So this hopefully will help us clarify. We'll work with our principals and staff to how they can show it and make sure that people understand. This is a pretty constant issue, Ms. Messing can tell you, with people asking for video records. So we're hoping this will help clarify that.
it will, but I'd like to go back to C and just give me a little bit more comfort on protection of information and disclosure under B. So it said copies of recordings of incidents subject to investigation, court cases, or due process hearing must be retained until resolved. And then that is where my concern come in, because we did have a case that we could no longer view the tape because it was time limit. It went away. We couldn't store it or save it. So, Miss, maybe you could speak to this. Will we be protected from
Now,
that?
very clear, for records retention purposes, there's set schedules how long you have to keep things. Now, the problem with the recordings, if it hasn't been determined to fall under one of these categories, we naturally write over because we simply could not maintain the vast amount of camera footage. So if you waited to 6 months after an event, it may have disappeared automatically. Now, in the other event, I would turn over that to Ms. Turnbull to take.
That's what I was looking at, Ms. Turnbull.
Yes, so since that situation occurred, that was, I've not had that situation happen again. That was, I believe, a school saving error. I've spoken with OSUM, and they say that they can hold the videos for 60 days on the Genetech platform. The bus transportation video is a little bit different. But all of it can be saved indefinitely. The school just saved it incorrectly, so that's why they did not have it. And that is, we don't have schools saving it incorrectly often. That just happened to be an error, unfortunately, that was a bigger price than what it should have been, so.
You know, my concern is, and you're right, I do appreciate, Ms. Lynetta, you going that distance, and Laura Beth, due process is one of my concerns, and I just felt that when we didn't have all the information and everything that was accessible to us, I just felt like due process was sort of kind of, you know, and I know we go the distance, we go that limit, but I just want to make sure that we're protected in all areas, Mr. Delaney.
Yes, I've
Thank you so
gathered
much.
information on all the different
you.
audios on the buses and in the hallways, so that we know how long each one holds.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, and then other business also is policy 439. I'm assuming you brought this because of the transportation piece that you discussed about vans and everything about that.
Correct, and we
Yes.
did not
Development.
make any,
Right.
we know this is where we think it falls if
Yeah.
you wanted to put something in.
It fell into that. Ms. Woodhouse, for that 439 employee professional development, you've looked over that, and is that satisfactory to you? I mean, we're not really doing anything with it, but you know why that came up, right? Because we were asking questions about, transportation, like the usage of our vans and school vehicles,
Yes, ma'am.
and, who researched it?
Mr. Freeman.
Mr. Freeman,
I
thank
do
you.
remember that
Yeah,
now.
and so
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Freeman said it kind of fell because it was okay, and so I asked questions about professional development, because obviously we don't use professional development, I don't think, to go and, politic or,
We do
you
not,
know,
correct, we do
whatever.
not. Our professional development, is based directly in support of our strategic plan, which all aligns really to, our content knowledge and being able to do our jobs better. And it does not include, political assemblies.
That was good. Assemblies. Okay, so this was just for our information, since we did discuss it, colleagues, and,
Yes, we did.
yeah, and to make sure that everybody who okays those obviously knows this. All right. Okay, and then, we would just add to our next agenda, if it's not too full, the school clubs, because that has come up. We've gotten several emails about that. And then also, I just want to thank Cammie for clarifying, I meant to say this at the first, and she sent this email out to us, I think during our meeting, about the responsibilities of PRC, because I think some misinformation or insinuations came from, on the dais, last school board meetings that weren't exactly accurate. So I'm gonna read this in our bylaw. The responsibilities of the PRC will be to consider input from the public, students, staff, school administration, other stakeholders. So we don't just get it from the school board and they don't vote on what we're gonna discuss. We then, get it from, like today, we're
Yes.
getting it from different constituents. I mean, Suzanne was sitting in the audience and she brought up the class rank thing. So we try to just, talk about anything that comes up to us, and it's not school board voted, but school board, other members have access to our whole packet, and they can certainly add their 2 cents in, but I just wanted to clarify that, and thank you for sending that bylaw. Okay, our next meeting is January 28th, 2026 at 3:30.
I just have one more
Oh,
thing
yeah,
to add for you.
sure.
We normally do a recap of what we've done throughout the year and then what is to come. So we're gonna provide that in the January meeting. So that way y'all kind of see what you're gonna be looking forward to for the next year.
Okay, perfect. We appreciate that. All right, and this meeting is adjourned at 5:43. Thank you, everybody.
At 3:30?